Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's September 27th, 2022. This may be the 10th or so talk that we've done in the series. Tonight, Lori Horowitz. I'm Barry Kostrinsky. I'll moderate, and we're all welcome, as always, to chime in, chat, use the chat, or really just break in to disrupt Lori's train of thought. Ask her any question you like. But that's part of it, is that we engage each other, and questions often open up various thoughts. Lori, your work is moving. It's beautiful. It's you. This is, I often think color palette is a reflection of the person's personality or something. I don't know what, maybe their essence. And I think when you see Lori's work and you see Lori, you might be able in the game to line up that work with you. But I don't know you that well. So I think you being in your work is important. And I think that's your case. You feel free to share anything that you like, Lori. And thank you for your time and everyone else for joining us. By the way, next week is a open talk. I'll have a live model. We'll discuss ideas. There'll be a model on screen. Whoever wants to draw, we can discuss process. Anything goes. And the week after, I'm on the honeymoon. So.
Whoa, you're getting married, Mr. B.
And I would run the talk from there, but the future wife has, divorce papers.
That would be a bad move, it seems.
I know where to draw the line.
Yes, you must prioritize, Barry.
Yeah. So welcome, Lori.
Congratulations, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. So hi, everyone. Interesting what Barry just said about I am and my color palette, and I'm reflected through my work. And my work tends to be pretty dark and pretty reflecting a lot of bad things I see in this world. And I tend to be a pretty up, kind of happy type of person. So I really think that people either reveal their inner demons, things that are going on in their life, and their work is reflected inward. And my work reflects what I see outside in the world. And I try and take those images, those situations, digest them, and put them back out to the world so they can see it through my eyes. And I think that's what my work is really about. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint, if I can find it here, and share some of that with you. I'm in my studio now, and I'm also going to show you some of what I'm working on. Let's see. Okay. And let's see. And let's go. View slideshow. Okay, now I have to get back to share screen somehow, correct? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Okay.
Yes. Sorry there.
So I want to go share screen. Okay, and I'm going to hit this, share, and I'm going to start.
There you go.
All right, I'm getting there. Okay, that's me. All right. So a little background on myself. I have a background as a painter, sculptor, and photographer, but I've worked many years in film, TV, and theater, and I am a union scenic painter and scenic artist, which means that I've picked up a lot of skills along the way, and I'm kind of a materials freak. I'm always experimenting with materials and learning different methods. And a large part of my practice is really doing the science, doing the chemistry, and playing with materials. So I'm going to go. This is my pre-COVID earlier work. I went out and I took pictures of people I met. Some of them shared their stories. Others are just like brief, candid moments. And these are 3D pieces, a little bit larger than life. And they're just sharing emotions and situations people are going through. Each one has a story to tell. But it's a lot based on a lot of the techniques I learned in theater. and they are kind of theatrical in nature. Then I moved on to working with encaustic wax and metals. And these pieces, again, people I met in different situations. One on the left is from Coney Island. The one in the center, he's from California on Venice Beach. And the one on the right is from Cuba when I did a residency out there. The difference between the paper mache pieces and these are it's all about the seen and the unseen in society and people who are a little bit on the periphery. So the idea is to look past the surface, and all these pieces are translucent. So the idea of getting past the surface, getting past the situation or what you think these pieces are about. For example, the guy in the center, I thought he was begging, where he actually was drinking his coffee. He was wearing a J. Crew kind of jacket. He had new sandals on. And when I really started to observe him and see what he was about, it wasn't what I had originally thought. And a lot of that goes for many of the characters I came into contact with. This piece was done as kind of an experiment, and also it's called Veiled Innocence. And it is a response to some of the child abuse that was going on. It was like really heavily in the news. And during this time of COVID, I was kind of trapped inside, listening to the radio, listening to the news, seeing what was going on. And it's really the same materials as with the paper mache. My base is always out of chicken wire. And then the black screen is sewn onto the figure itself. And then I project a light onto it, which is the theatrical part of things, and that's a shadow. And my prompt was to make it so you couldn't distinguish between the sculpture and the shadow itself. They really mimicked each other so closely that it was kind of an interesting match. The other thing that's exciting about this is that depending on the projection distance from the light to the actual piece, you can have the shadow the same size as the piece, or you can have it 10 feet tall. So it is really nice to put that in a really large space that's dark. Here's another one I did. Let me just move this over. Anyhow, this one is called Sitting in the Shadows. It's having to do with, again, the seen and the unseen in society, women's issues, and again, sculpted in chicken wire covered with this black wire mesh. Very difficult process to do, tons of sewing, tons of hours, but I was really happy with the outcome of this piece.
Lori, you know what it makes me think, and I apologize, because as an artist, when I see things, I often think of other things that you could do. And when I see this and you're working with the shadow, it makes me think of projections. And so then I think the next step, have you ever animated the shadow and the image and combined in a play, like a short video?
I haven't, but it's really interesting. As you move the light around, I've had it so the light does move when I display these, and it actually, the piece itself turns around and it does animate really interestingly. The lighting has been a tremendous issue getting it right. You can only show it in certain places. You have to have full control over where you are. Generally in galleries, there's too much ambient light. So it's been tough showing these pieces, but when I get the opportunity to, it's wonderful. I had done an earlier series of copper pieces with shadows, and I switched back and forth between doing the paperwork and doing the copper work and the wire work, because it takes a toll on my hands. It's very difficult. So when I get fatigued, I go back and do paper mache. So I'll go to the next piece. So this piece was done kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. Um, there were, it's called Grieve, and it was basically about the loss and the pain that people were going through during COVID. It's a little smaller than life size. It's made similar process with the chicken wire base. Body language, movement, gesture is all really important in my work, and I feel it's like an essential part of sculpture, that things can't be static, that things um, have to move. The cladding on this is woven copper and spun copper, so it just glistens really nicely. It's beautiful material. And then the gauze on top of it is draped so and then fixed in place. And it represents kind of a burial shroud that many religions use, as well as this thin, translucent skin that we are still wanting to see past that facade and try and understand the circumstances that people are going through. So I did a series of about 6 of these pieces. Here's another one. This one is called Shrouded. Again, I had done this like right after my brother-in-law had passed away, and it's just that was the feeling, that was the language, and that was again what I experienced, what other people experienced, and that was the loss. This is a recent piece just finished. It is called Bound by Injustice, and this is my response to the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I have my little constitution in the bars there, showing that our freedoms are being affected and taken away. This piece again, the chicken wire base, and this is all with covered with sewn copper wire mesh. Pretty difficult process again. It's torched. I also started playing with different patinas, and I soak the material in different vinegars and salts and ammonia to get different colors and different hues. Also, I do a lot of torching and change color with the different types of heat, whether it's propane, oxyacetylene, or butane. They all deliver different colors and different, techniques. So as I was playing with this new copper I found, the other copper prior years was really very heavy. And I came upon this gauge of copper, which is thinner, and I started playing with it more, and that's what I wrapped around the previous figure. And I realized I can get very, very tight detail on it. These are small studies. So, and this portion, that the dark part is the shadow. So you can see that the shadow is really pretty intense. It looks like a graphite drawing. And that's what I love about the shadow pieces. Here's another one that's done. And it's, one small piece of copper, and it's just sort of working it and trying to get the figures to emerge from it. The depth on it is only about 3 inches, but it really has a feel of, quite a bit of depth. And when I do them, it's a surprise to me what the shadow is going to be. So I kind of understand at this point how the wire works, what it's going to do, and the shadow is the exciting part. That's my surprise at the end. And I came across this technique. I had done a small portrait, And as I was walking from one room to the next, I had my iPhone on. I had gone from my studio into a dark room, and the light from my iPhone shot through it and projected right onto the wall. And it was one of those aha moments of being aware of something and saying, oh, wow, this is amazing. And what can I do with this? So I've been playing with these shadows for a number of years now. And as I continue, they change. Sometimes they are really primary in my work, and other times they take a backseat. But I'm really interested in pursuing new techniques, different techniques, and that's kind of what drives my work. Okay, so on the lighter side of things, I realized that I couldn't work from people anymore. You know, everybody was masked, everybody was afraid of each other. I stayed away. You know, you're in lockdown. So what I did was I went into nature. I'm kind of a tree hugger, and I went into nature and I started taking hundreds of pictures of mushrooms and lilies and all sorts of fungus, and this was my beauty from decay, which has evolved and worked. I started doing these. They were kind of small and tedious, although I like how they came out. I wasn't always all that excited about what I was doing. I was kind of bored doing them. So, you know, I kept going. I made about 10 or 12 of these pieces, which are, you know, look a little better now, and I'll show you them on the wall. But I then started going into nature, and I came across what are called cedar knees, and they're from cedar trees, and they're found in swamp areas. And I took hundreds of pictures of these little roots that are about, you know, anywhere from 3 to 6 inches tall. And these became my people. So I started photographing them, printing them, and then I went into them with colored pencil and just drew into them and pulled out the humanity in nature. I probably have 75 of these drawings and quite enjoyed doing them. And it also taught me so much about lighting because and painting. I was really studying these roots and how the light was hitting them and understanding how things, you know, became round and how they looked in nature. And as I did it, I really finally observed the light, which I find is the most important part of painting and sculpting. So this was, you know, one example.
You know, you're doing a lot of great things here. First of all,
Yeah.
you're working
I'm
small
gonna move.
and you're in a tree and you're seeing human form. And if you work simply enough, tree and branch will give you human form, cloud will give you human form. It's only so many lines that we play with in our visual space. But I've got to, you know, I see the imagery and I like it very much. It's harsh. It's like a mix of Brueghel and something out of Bosch.
Totally, exactly. And in fact, I started to research, like especially that last image I showed you. I started to research, like, where is this coming from? Where are these people coming from? What point of history? And it's like Dutch, you know, early Dutch, you know, around Brueghel's time. I went back and I started looking, trying to figure out where this influence is coming from, which I thought was really interesting. So this piece, these two pieces here are example of the roots, which became these cluster of families or people. Again, having to do with what I guess I was listening to at the time, which was, it's called Exodus, and it was about what was going on at the border and immigration and people trying to find place and homelessness and the struggles people were going through. So it was me sort of, again, digesting what was going on in the world and internalizing it and putting it out there. And again, these small roots became my people. And this next
Can I
one,
ask a question?
Sure.
Are those photographs that you're drawing into to create
Yes.
the imagery? Okay.
Yes. So basically, it's a print on a heavyweight drawing paper.
Smart.
And then
Okay, so you
know,
print the image that you took and then you manipulate it by hand on the drawing paper.
on the drawing paper, yeah. So I'm basically starting with these roots and following the light and seeing where the forms create. And it takes a few hours to actually pull the images. They're in there and I have to pull them out.
Yeah, it's so great. I have these near my house actually with these knees, and I've always thought I could see figures. So it's so cool that you've done this, and it's it's like right there and you just kind of realized it.
And every time I think I'm finished with them, I'm compelled to go back and take more of them. So they're, like I said,
But now these are actually sculptural pieces inspired by that.
So what happened was, at a point, another aha moment. These are the drawings that didn't make it. I had a bunch of drawings that, they weren't great. So I decided I soaked them in paste, because paper mache is my primary medium. And I, figured out how to push and pull them so they didn't fall apart. And I came up with these paper pieces. So, and as I went through, I did more. And then I should show you another one, but okay. What happened was I started printing them larger on cloth. And this is a fairly large piece, 54 high by 32 wide. And here comes together the wire work, the copper work, the sculpting, the painting, and the wax. So this has everything but the kitchen sink in it. And again, from that Exodus series, this was one of the first ones I did, and it was very difficult because I didn't understand or didn't have a good way of sculpting this cloth from underneath it. So I just had to sort of stuff it and work with wire and all sorts of different materials and use a board behind it to give it structure. And it was a lot of logistics of how to get this to work. The wax, I love working with the encaustic wax. I use heat guns and metal dental tools that can retain the heat and go back and forth. And it's just really an interesting, exciting way for me to paint more sculpturally. So there's this piece. And then these are two more. The one on the left is a little more classically drawn, and mainly the gauze, mainly the encaustic wax. There is a lot of metal and other things, and unfortunately from this you can't really get the idea of the relief, but it probably is about 3 to 4 inches in depth. The one on the left as well as the one on the right. And all the metal on it is patinaed with ammonia and vinegar and salts, and the copper is worked through it along with cloth and all sorts of things. But it's me playing with painting a bit more than I usually do. So that's kind of exciting for me.
Laurie, many
Yeah.
of these images, which I've known you for a long time, and I've seen a variety of them, but they all feel very Tolkienish. They've come out of Tolkien's imagery for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, you're not the first one who said that to me. You're actually the second person who said that to me. So, who knows where influences come and manifest in your mind and
right.
the styles and different things. But I have a feeling that a lot of those images that he used came out of the woods as well.
Very much
And
so. I agree with you.
so these are the roots. So what I did is I took a root drawing, blew it up to 54 inches high on gauze, printed it on gauze, stuffed it from the back, and started working it. And this one is a little bit more detailed than some of the other ones, but it's, really a lot more textured, a lot of fabric, a lot of copper, different materials in this. But again, I'm being limited by the fact that I can't actually totally sculpt the uh, the board itself, the material itself. And I'm working from behind, just really trying to encourage this to become more sculptural.
I will say Tolkien was also responding to war and World War II. And so I hate to belabor a point, and
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of tragedy in the world, and you're addressing it. And I don't mean to go after it, but I want to ask you, Laurie, normal relationships growing up, everything, no young deaths, because the work speaks to a pain. And often when I paint, someone responds, I'm like, no, that's not me, but I can access the feeling. So it doesn't mean that that's your feeling, but there's a mumminess, there's a death, there's a claustrophobia, there's a half-life thing going on. I'm trying to figure what in you brought it
And
out.
so that's the interesting part. Now, I was brought up where I didn't even know there were bad people in the world until I became like much more of an adult. Um, I had a really good family life. I was happy, all this. I don't have that horror story that I really need to go along with my artwork to get my work out there. I have to manufacture something. So really what I am saying is I'm seeing it out there. It's not internalized. It's not coming from my past angst and being abused or abusive. It's me seeing and being empathetic to, I think, a lot of what other people go through, and realizing how privileged or how lucky I am that I've had this good life. And that's the best way I can say it.
Very good way. Very good way to say it.
So again, here I'm going back to, and this is all fairly recent. This is, again, one of the drawings on the left that didn't make it, that I pushed and pulled. And as I'm doing this, I realized I can do this same process on cloth that I can do on paper. And what I've managed to do is back these with aluminum. And with the aluminum behind it, I can get perfect resolution and sculpting to whatever I want. So that's pretty much what I did on this piece. And then this is a large piece, which I'm in the process of working on, and that's hollow freestanding. And I now found a material that I can coat this with, make it strong, and then waterproof. So these actually can go outside at this point. So this
And
is
they're relatively light, correct?
they weigh nothing. They weigh, a pound. They weigh next to nothing. It's cloth, aluminum, and just the coating on it. So it's all this, exploration that I'm doing. And every day I'm trying a new material. Do I print on gauze? Do I print on cotton? Do I coat it with, one layer of this? How many layers of aluminum do I use behind it? And as I go, I'm really, uncovering all sorts of new ways of doing it. And, you know, it's a lot of me pushing the materials and knowing where I'm going and figuring it out before I do it. So it's like, I'll figure it out, you know, in my head. And then the labor part is I actually have to make it. It's made in my head, but now I have to go and actually, you know, physically produce it. So I
I will
have,
say, Lori, it's great to hear you say these didn't make the cut in the drawings. So I'm using it here, and I speak for everyone looking at your work. They make the cut for us, and I think what you have there is, every artist has, there can be their best critic or worse, but you're really honing what you accept, and I appreciate that. But I will say, everything that you think that about is probably not true. It's all really good. There's a uniformity of your images and your work and a consistency that, and I like how you find solutions, and you push it different ways. Of course, you're a materials person. You can do that. It was asked by Audrey Anastasi, sorry there. When you exhibit these, do you hang them away from the wall? She may be referring to earlier pieces. I imagine you're off about 3 inches, or
some of these, I started mainly as a sculptor. And what happened was sculptures don't show in galleries. Sculptures don't get an opportunity to be seen unless they fit nicely on a little pedestal. So the idea of how to get my work seen and in shows and out there was to make them into reliefs. And working as a set designer for many years, it's all about the view from the sight lines. So in other words, whatever is behind it doesn't matter. And scenery is meant to stand up and then be thrown away. So what's behind it is this skeletal structure that nobody sees. Well, nobody cares about that. So I ended up starting to work that way, smaller, although I like working very, very large. So they are wall pieces for that reason. Now it's even harder for me to pull things away from the wall because I got so used to working in it as a relief. And the other thing is I work from photos as my sketchbook, and photos are very, they're two-dimensional, but until you sculpt into a photo, do you realize how much everything is being pushed onto one plane? So it's like what we call an elevation drawing, where everything in all the depth that you see is squashed onto one plane. And then doing the relief is difficult because you're really extruding it from that plane and bringing it out into 3 dimensions without any additional information of what's around it. So that's another challenge that goes along with working in relief.
And by the way, what you said about we sort of flatten the image. That's why when anybody takes a picture of you, you always look fatter in the face. Because, you're on an angle and it's getting that whole oval, it's losing the depth. And so that's what's going on.
Yeah.
May
I say that I liked that explanation because you covered some very interesting things. The question was originally specifically about the pieces with the shadows, because it seems like that would be very specific, not only that it's away from the wall, but how you control the light source to get those shadow drawings, so to speak. So that's what the question was. But
Okay.
Like I said, I'm glad you answered more broadly than my question.
Well, going back to the shadow pieces, they have their own slew of problems in hanging. First of all, you don't want to show the hanger, so they have to be on a very thin, either wire, monofilament, or something away from the wall, and either they're hung from the ceiling or you have to have something that protrudes out from the wall far enough that it can be approximately 3 feet away from the wall. The further away from the wall, the further away the light is, the larger the image that you can get. And also you need to use a single focus LED bulb to do that in order to get a sharp focus. So there's all sorts of playing around that goes along with getting the relief pieces like the wire pieces to work.
You know, I can't help but think, and I know you're looking for the fixed point lighting and you want to get the shadow that works. You know, at the same time, I think, what if you had 6 different lights popping at different times, at different angles? And so the reflection is constantly moving. You'd have it sort of dancing on the wall.
I need a good electrician.
Don't we all?
Lori, I was thinking about a light that just constantly moved.
Yes, that works as well. The idea that Barry has really works very well, to have it on a timer and shift lighting like that. Again, it's if you have one light overlapping the other, it blurs out the sharpness or the focus of the light. So it's one at a time moving or one light moving. So either does work. And it's exciting to do that. You just have to have a place to do it.
And Laura, you know, with all the people you know, you're one step away from somebody who knows how to hook up the electric for you. That's the way artists are. We're one step away from anything that's needed. So you can, you know.
Yeah, no, the problem is actually having a place to show it, not having, knowing how to do it. It's truly having the opportunity and the gallery or the place where you have complete control of the lightings, where they'll say, yeah, go for it and do that. That's more the challenge than anything else. So, okay, and that's my last slide. And this is an earlier piece that I did. It's 12 feet tall, and it was a mixture of a lot of different forms that I had done. It was at Michael David Company. I did a residency there in Bushwick just when COVID hit. This was supposed to be shown in the gallery. Everything got shut down. The back gallery closed. I got trapped in with 9 people in this horrible residency, and that was the culmination of my residency COVID experience. So anyhow, so I'm gonna stop sharing.
Can I open it up to some questions and thoughts? At first, like we always do, thank you, Laurie.
Yeah,
Beautiful work and
thank you.
beautifully presented and opened up by your dialogue and explaining it. I like how you sort of say, but we can't get shows on pedestals, so I had to put it on the wall. That's great. It's yeah, sculpture becomes a problem.
But that's what's going on. Oh, I did want to show you one thing. This is my big breakthrough, which is I'm going back to nature again, but I don't know if you can see. This is the fabric. I've managed to really harden it. I can sculpt it, and now if I do a mirror image of it, I can make it 3-dimensional. So this is where I'm going with these pieces now. And this will get integrated with some of the bigger pieces and become an installation. So that's where I'm moving now. So.
Laurie, have you worked with fiberglass to stiffen things at the far end?
Oh, that's how I started years ago, and that's where chemical poisoning and all those fun things come into play. I am very careful now, where I wasn't when I was younger and naive, whatever. Part of the training for working in the union is you go through an OSHA course. And at that point, which I wish I would have gone through in art school, I realized how toxic, and even just wearing latex gloves instead of nitrile gloves and things that penetrate the membrane and all that. I worked a lot with, when I discovered resin and epoxy and plastics, I was like knee deep in it. I mean, powders and chopped brass and copper and everything bonded together, all that stuff. Not a good thing.
And I had the same path at the same age. And Fortunately, I had a professor at the time, because it was still in school, who had had resin poisoning. He wouldn't even come in the building if any of us were using that. So I was aware really, really early on how toxic it was, but it's a phenomenal product to work with.
It is, but like I said, I've gotten to the point here now where I don't need to use anything toxic.
That's
And
great.
I'm getting, and these things are lightweight and strong. I mean, there was a time where I was using dryer lint, and my husband's a veterinarian, so we had dryer lint with dog hair, which was stronger than fiberglass. So I was
Okay, good to
mixing
know.
that in. So you know, it's playing around and trying to figure out the best ways to do these things, and you know, save your lungs.
Yeah, no kidding.
So what do you use to cover your sculptures that's not toxic?
So, you know, white glue is my go-to. It's PVA, which is polyvinyl acetate. And although it has its pros and cons, I mix it into my paper mache paste. I coat sculptures with it. And basically, you know, using different, now there's something that's art resin, which is supposedly a safe resin. And I read all the material, you know, the data sheets before I use a material at this point. And like I said, did have chemical poisoning. I worked in a toy company designing and making toys like way back, and got chemical poisoning from vacuum forming PVC, which is, you know, polyvinyl chloride. So then I started reading my chemical and, you know, my textbooks, and seeing what the chemical components were and what's toxic and not. And, you know, basically at this point now, I buy a material and it's by some art company, and just by looking or smelling it, I can tell what it's made out of, and you're paying 10 times the amount for it. And it comes in a tiny little jar, you know.
Mhm.
So I find all that interesting and important, along with the concept and, you know, basically what you're getting out there.
Yeah. I've been looking at your work for the last few years on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm really glad I tuned in tonight because I can see it big and the way it should be. Are you exhibiting anywhere on Long Island?
I have 3 pieces going into a show at the Bay Art Cutting Arboretum, which is where my roots come from, actually.
Okay.
So it's sort of a nice place to have them there. So that's opening, I think, October 6th. We're having a show there. And coming up after that, I think the next larger show I'm going to be having is in March. I'm supposed to have 2 solo shows in Chelsea. We'll see how that goes. So it's always kind of one day at a time, wherever you get pulled into and whatever happens. But always open to studio visits if people really want to see more. And so that's kind of what's going on with my work.
Very enjoyable.
Odd question. You did say you were did scenic work, I think movies and television, maybe. And I
Yes.
respect that, because there've been a lot of great artists who have come out of California in the 50s and 60s who did that. There's a different way it's being looked at. What did you do? And anyone who listens knows I love to ask this question. What did you do when you were younger? I'm assuming you started making art at age 6. And what did you make?
Mainly, I was a painter. I started painting. I went to art school for painting. Discovered sculpture probably my last year of high school. And what I realized is not only can you see it, but you can feel it. And to me, it was much easier. And I think people see things either 3-dimensionally or 2-dimensionally. And I see things 3-dimensionally. And the thing that got me hooked on sculpture was going to a clay beach on the North Shore of Long Island called Garvey's Point, where kid's birthday party, stuck my hands deep into the clay, pulled out porcelain, and probably wiped it all over my body, and that was the end of it. That's what made me a sculptor. So, but
Very
kept,
I can see in your work, and I want to say you have a strong history of life drawing.
yes. My go-to Da Vinci, Rembrandt, Michelangelo, my masters. And at this point,
I'm sorry, who are those guys?
You're a bunch of old men.
a
There we
bunch
go.
of a bunch
Yeah.
of old men, but there's something that talks to me. That's my go-to. I have my Da Vinci Bible that's always there. But at this point, I think I understand the body movement or something well enough in the musculature that I don't need reference anymore.
So when an athlete, a baseball player, learns his skill, the motor memory is there in the swing. It's not broken up into parts. Same as a golfer, a rookie golfer. It's like up, down. No, it's a uniformity. So you sort of learn, your body has learned your form, and I don't think you're ever referencing anyone else. I think the similarity to Tolkien is just that you're dealing with pain, death, loss, the things that are around us. And so was Tolkien. And so I think you really reference your original feelings, as you said, what you see in the world.
I
Yeah.
just want to say, I think Lori, I love your work, Lori. Has so much depth and breadth and, from humor and joy. And one of the things that, I don't think we've talked about a lot, even though like Barry and other people have mentioned, is I think the joy and the humor is also so strong in your work. And I think that makes the other parts, as we all know, that's the dichotomy of things that are what gives the push and the pull of the yin and the yang of things. And I think I see so much of both in your work, and that's what makes it especially appealing to me and meaningful and evocative.
Thank you. Thank you. It's funny because most people, my feedback that I get from most people are, why can't you do something happy? Why can't you do something that's pretty? Why can't you do something that people will like? That's the kind of feedback I usually get. And I don't want to make fluff. I think there's enough fluff out in the world, and that, yeah, it is hard to digest some of this stuff, and it is difficult, whether it's looking at some of these, these root formations and these plants that are the strange plants that you find underneath the undergrowth, or the, the Venus flytrap, and the mushrooms, the fungus, as opposed to the, the pretty roses and the daffodils, which kind of go against my grain. And when I look at the people in society and the people I'm picking, it's like their stories need to be heard. Their situations need to be understood. They're the unseen. They're the ones who are crying out for attention in some way. And that's, the idea of behind the work, pulling apart the underbelly of society, and what's underneath, what lies beneath, and that's what this whole series is about.
It's odd for so long ago, but Da Vinci did drawings of the regular people, all their deformities, all their uniquenesses, let's say.
Yes.
And he gave us a picture that we're not going to get at some painting of a duke. He gave us a picture of the common man in the common poses, and it's current. And when I look at Da Vinci's landscapes in the back of the Mona Lisa or those kind of thing, and I look at the way he does trees, I'm like, that's the way I sort of see it. Same with Rembrandt. I don't know, they reduce to this simple curve that works for me. It's like a mix of early Renaissance and complicated Baroque work. But there's a simplicity in it that I strive for. And, I hope to draw those kind of trees by seeing it in nature as opposed to copying it. You learn a lot from the masters.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the simplicity idea, coming from set design, it's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. You have the acting, the music, the lighting, the scenery. So it's many layers coming together to form one scene. And it's when all those mesh together in harmony, that's when it's successful. So when I work on a piece, it's pretty layered and it's pretty complicated. So if you can get all those different elements to sort of to sit together well, then I feel it's successful.
Very nice.
It feels very genuine.
Yes.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah. Thank you, Laurie. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and of course, everybody for joining. This will be up on the YouTube channel in a couple of days, and on my website, which I put in the chat, or if you go to some of my social media, you can see it. And Lori, I'll send you a copy once it's up, and then you can see past talks as well. Again, next week it's going to be different. I'm going to try first of the month where we have informal dialogue around ideas and topics. By the way, anybody is welcome when we do that to show some of their images. We're going to keep it casual. And yes, I'm gonna try again. I used to have a lot of life drawing models that worked when I did life drawing. I'll try and get one in the Zoom screen. I think it'll be sort of interesting. And it was inspired. I believe it was, were you drawing, Lori? Yeah, you were creating when you watch. And I sort of
Yeah.
like that. I like activating the arts. That's why when you present, we ask questions and it activates. And I like that further idea. I'm trying to make the group live in a sense, and then we can actually create and respond to it. But as we've said, whatever you plan, that don't happen. You put a few pieces of the puzzle together and see what happens. And I look forward to it. Then the week after, I won't be here. Someone's taking me on a honeymoon.
Ah, darn.
I'll bring my sketchbook. I never draw on vacation. I'm more likely to draw in a restaurant on a napkin than when I'm all ready to go. So it's
Barry,
all- yes.
understand a honeymoon is not a vacation.
I'd be working to keep the honey happy.
It's a job.
Yeah, it's a good job, and I'm happy to have it. And just like this, Lori, there are a lot of ways to reflect and to feel life. And I think as artists, it's in a way the most beautiful way. We're turning it creative. We're letting it evolve. We're sharing with others so they see. I couldn't help but echo your thought. I've been lucky. I didn't have a lot happen to me, but when I see it happen to people, I can feel it. And so I learn from the tragedies out there. And I'm lucky because I learned without the scars. Bacon had to have the scars to make that work. To some extent, Van Gogh too, and many, many artists. But to be able to do it and to feel things, to be emphatic, I think it's something that we do as artists, and then you try and convey it to others. It's sort of like, wake up, this is what is. And we do see the surface. We do candy coat. The war, is it still going on? I can't even remember the country, right? So I lose a few points. I mean, we are very snippet driven, and your work is not snippet driven. It's complex. The layering is obvious. And you also mentioned the word play. I think that's one of the greatest words in an artist's vocabulary. And at time, critics or other people go, oh, she said play, sandbox. We can make a show where it's a sandbox and the artists come and play. So play is complicated stuff. It's a gateway to creativity. And I applaud you. I've seen your work and I've seen you present before. I'll have to ask, Bonnie Leibowitz a friend?
A Facebook friend. In fact, okay, this horrible residency that I did in Bushwick, she was one of the orchestrators of that. So I never met her. It was just a back and forth, and I really don't even think she knows how horrible I thought the residency was.
Well, we'll tell her for sure now that we all know. We get a lot of messages on Facebook. And I mentioned her because the work has a similar feel, very different, a little more expansive or asymmetrical in ways. Very similar in ways, different colorations, but I think she's a sister.
Yeah, I mean the use of the wax and the hanging of the fabric and such, but I'm aware of her work. I very strongly try not to be influenced by other artists' work, and I don't go and start studying other people's work, where I find a lot of people do that to learn techniques and ideas and this and that. I think if I'm overly influenced by other people's work, I won't be producing sort of or coming up with original ways of doing things. So that's one of my, right or wrong, it's just one of the ways I work.
I think you're right there. It is very dangerous because our art is our path. We have lots of influences in our experiences and what we see and do, and we're not artists for the first year. So you have a momentum. Even when my girlfriend looks at my art, fiance, and she gives me a negative criticism because she's not happy with what I did 10 minutes ago, that impacts me. I know it's dangerous because I'm very confident in myself when I create. But when somebody comes into the studio, it can be a different story. So there are some artists who don't want to talk. They don't want to hear your ideas. They want to create there. And I respect that very much.
Well, that is actually not what I'm saying.
Okay.
No, I'm actually saying that I don't want to seek out other people's work and start assuming some of their techniques and ideas. More so, I encourage as many people to give me critique as possible because I sift through it and I might not have thought of that or not seen that. So, throw it at me. I'm not going to it's not going to hurt me, but it'll open my eyes. So that's how I look at it.
I think whenever I make a comment, if I hit it dead on or I'm 180 degrees wrong as I was there, that's the bet. Because then you're like,
okay.
No, it's actually this. And I do that a lot. And I think that's good in a way. It sort of fleshes it out. Again, thank you. And thanks to everybody for coming. Nice to see so many regulars and some new faces. Join us next Tuesday, the day after the wedding, when I think I'm allowed, but I will be allowed to do that talk. So thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Congratulations, Barry.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stop recording.